I'm Emery Harper, 34, founder of an AI ethics firm, raised in a house that taught me how to smile for pictures but never how to exist. While my sister posed for Vogue with a fiancé born into old money, I was reviewing a $180 million acquisition and deciding whether to show up to a wedding that forgot my last name. The envelope didn't say Harper, just Emery, as if that was all I was ever allowed to be. But what they didn't expect was that the daughter they disinvited by design would walk in anyway. Not to be seen, but to remind them she already mattered in rooms they'll never be invited to. Before I tell you how I turned a curated garden party into a reckoning without saying a single rude word, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever been the invisible one who stopped apologizing for existing. The wedding invite came in a cream envelope, thick and smug. It sat on my kitchen counter for 2 days, unopened. The return address was embossed, the kind of calligraphy that screams curated elegance. There was no sender name, just an ornate seal, Harper and Kingsley. My sister's engagement must have finally made the press. I didn't bother to Google it. I already knew. The name missing from the invite confirmed everything. Emery Harper. But the calligraphy had left off Harper. Just Emery. As if even now they couldn't be bothered to get the full name of the daughter who didn't belong. My phone pinged. Mom, don't wear anything too business. Just try to blend in, okay? Blend in. Like a wallflower at my own family's garden. I should have been used to it. I went back to my desk, the city's skyline framing my office window in sharp neon blues. The deal we were finalizing had just crossed the $180 million mark. My team was halfway through reviewing clause revisions. My associate asked if I wanted to brief the board before morning. I said no. I had just been disinvited in the most formal way possible, by being invited incorrectly. I looked again at the envelope. My reflection shimmered off its glossy surface. I saw a face sculpted by caution. Clean makeup, hair pulled into a no-nonsense twist. My reflection didn't flinch. But somewhere underneath, I still heard her voice. Mom's, saying, "You'd be prettier if you smiled more." I sat back and remembered a different envelope. A pink one. 4th grade. I had won a spot at the state-level junior coding camp. I brought it home, glowing. Dad said, "That's great, Em." Mom didn't say anything. That weekend, I was grounded. For missing ballet rehearsals. Madeline had danced. I had debugged. I didn't go to the camp. I never brought home another award. Instead, I built my life elsewhere. My world lived in equity charts, pitch decks, and glass buildings filled with people who didn't care how I looked, just how I closed. Still, I couldn't stop staring at that envelope. Why send it? Why now? I slipped it open. The card was thick enough to stop a bullet. Inside, silver-foiled text detailing the union of Madeline Harper and August Kingsley. A wedding hosted at the Grandview Estate. Black tie, sunset vows, champagne reception, family reserved seating. 1 name per envelope. No guest. As if I'd bring one. As if I'd been offered one. I pushed back from the counter. My apartment, sleek, beige, curated, felt like it was shrinking around me. I opened my laptop, meant to dive into the Zurich pitch, but instead I clicked open an old folder. Harper, Archive. Photos. Letters. Emails never sent. At the top was a draft press release titled, "Zurich Innovation Forum Honors American Founder for Ethical AI Development." Beneath it, the opening line, "Emery Harper to deliver keynote on restoring trust through design transparency." I had never shared it with my family. They never asked. I shut the screen, breathed. I wasn't going to that wedding for them. I wasn't going to rekindle bonds or wear a forced smile. I was going to stand in the frame they had painted without me and let them see what they left out. I opened the closet. I didn't pick red. That would be too obvious. I didn't pick silver. That would be too desperate. I picked black. Smooth lines, no shimmer. Controlled power. I zipped the suitcase slowly. They expect a shadow. I'm bringing a storm. ChatGPT John Noy. The The valet barely looked at me. His eyes flicked to the dress, then away, dismissive. I wasn't the kind of guest this venue anticipated. No +1, no couture label, no heirloom necklace glinting in the lights. Just a black dress, no sparkles, and a name half invited. Inside, the air changed. Chandeliers glittered like champagne frozen mid-pop. Strings of soft jazz curled between polished columns. Women in satin swept by like curated ghosts. Men with tailored smiles and pocket squares exchanged practiced laughs. Heels clicked like distant metronomes, keeping time for a ritual I didn't believe in. A whisper brushed past me, cut glass and sugar-coated. "Is that the sister?" I didn't turn. A cousin I barely remembered leaned toward another woman near the bar. I thought she wasn't coming this time. They looked like they'd been airlifted out of a yacht catalog. Everyone here shimmered. I walked through them like smoke. The seating chart had my name at the bottom corner of a polished wooden board. Emery Harper, in delicate cursive, nestled between Dr. Anders, Rhett and Sarah, and Uncle Russell. I was near the back. Not by mistake. They had curated every detail, and that included where I would fade quietly. The ceremony hadn't begun. People milled and mingled under warm lights. The Kingsleys' estate, if you could still call it that, was practically a museum of wealth. Marble floors, carved oak door frames, soft violins playing somewhere from nowhere. A waiter passed. I grabbed a glass of champagne and held it like armor. The judgment came in waves. "Still working too much to find someone?" "You're in finance, right?" "Oh, you must be exhausted all the time." "We never see you at holidays anymore." I smiled once. It didn't reach my eyes. Near the main aisle, I saw her. Madeline stood with their mother. The dress was everything you'd expect. Custom cut, pearl-stitch detail, a silhouette designed for fairy tales. She laughed, posed. A camera flash caught her mid-smile, mid-immaculate. I wondered if she felt real inside that sculpted joy. Mom turned toward me as I approached. Her eyes scanned from my neckline to my heels, pausing just long enough. "At least try to smile." I didn't. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "Talking with the Kingsleys. He's proud of Madeline." The last word lingered like a reminder. Before I could respond, Madeline appeared. She glided past guests, nodded at the violinist, and paused just beside me. Not a hug, not a hello. "Just don't make this about you." I looked her in the eye. I never could, even if I tried. She blinked. Surprised, maybe. Or just annoyed the way someone gets when an object they assumed inanimate starts talking. She walked away before I could feel anything about it. I wandered past a row of waiters restocking hors d'oeuvres. In the distance, a woman with sharp eyes and darker lipstick, Olivia Crane, caught my glance. Her expression shifted. Recognition, not warmth. She said nothing, but she didn't look away until I did. I found my seat. Not hidden, but surrounded by strangers. That's when I noticed him. Near the front, at the main table, one man didn't laugh or sip or whisper. Silver hair, pressed suit. Quiet. He looked straight at me, and didn't look away. The room hushed the way it does before something breaks. And then Richard Kingsley rose. His chair scraped softly, yet it cut through the ambient strings and silverware clinks like a cymbal. People turned. Not just out of politeness. This was a man whose stillness usually meant authority. Motion from him meant movement for others. The air thickened. I had been staring down at the gold-rimmed plate in front of me, the remains of an untouched amuse-bouche. When I glanced up, he was already walking. The same man who had locked eyes with me earlier now crossed the room with the solemnity of someone headed into a boardroom to end a war. Slow, deliberate. Not a smile in sight. Guests stilled. Mid-bite, mid-sentence. Forks hovered above porcelain like punctuation, waiting for context. Someone near me whispered, "Why is he walking to her?" A beat later, "Is she someone?" He reached my table. stopped exactly in front of me. I stood, because what else do you do when a billionaire approaches like you're the most important person in the room? He bowed, not a polite incline, a full, precise, deliberate bow. One hand over the other, spine slightly bent, head low. The kind of gesture that, in some cultures, could rewrite a room. Then he spoke. His voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. Miss Harper, your keynote at Zurich changed our global tech division. My chest froze. I didn't breathe. You saved 3,000 jobs. Gasps, a few sharp, some swallowed. A knife scraped a plate somewhere. Champagne flutes trembled in fingers suddenly unsteady. A woman across the aisle lowered her phone, which had been mid-swipe. Every eye swung toward me. The sister, the nobody, the extra chair. I blinked once. That was all I allowed myself. Madeline's expression shattered first. Her lips parted, then sealed, then forced into a smile too taut to be real. Nate looked between me and his uncle, confusion masking something uglier. At the head table, Mom's knuckles turned white against her napkin. Dad's face didn't move, not even a twitch. You were anonymous, Richard added, softer now. But some of us make it a point to trace the people who change the course of things. He straightened, still looking only at me. I recognized your language before I recognized your face. You argued not for profits, but for people. No one spoke. No one could speak. Not after that. I glanced down at the half-empty glass in my hand. The Zurich draft. The pitch. The articles. The data I buried inside white papers no one in this room ever thought I'd be capable of understanding, let alone crafting. The laugh that nearly bubbled up didn't make it to the surface. They thought I was a shadow, that I showed up out of spite or nostalgia or some craving to be acknowledged. They never imagined I'd already shaped the air they breathed, that the tablecloths and caterers and curated seating arrangements were still part of my economy. Richard leaned slightly forward. His voice dropped, low enough for the surrounding silence to hold it up like crystal. Would you walk with me? When I returned to my seat, the same people who dismissed me were standing, not out of courtesy, but uncertainty. They rose the way people do when they're not sure if the person before them now outranks them. Not reverence, not quite respect, just the awkward muscle memory of power shifting, and nobody wanting to be the one still seated if they guessed wrong. I didn't acknowledge them. The chair felt different now. Same fabric, same curve, but no longer peripheral. Someone from across the table, previously so absorbed in gossip about my dating life, tilted her head with a strained smile. A waiter appeared as if conjured, placing a fresh glass of champagne beside me with a murmur. On the house, Miss Harper. My name now had consonants. Wait. Someone else leaned over. I read that Zurich speech after brilliant. Another followed. We had no idea you were, well, that Emery Harper. No one had touched the dance floor. Music played, soft and expensive, but the ballroom felt arrested, like a painting waiting for the next brushstroke. I spotted Richard again, standing at the edge of the room like a chess master watching a move settle. He said nothing, just nodded once, then turned away. Then came the real performance. My mother. She glided toward me in heels that clicked like judgment softened by money. Her lipstick was flawless, her smile less so. You look beautiful tonight, she said, as if it were easy. I held her eyes. Is that pride or damage control? Her smile flinched. Before she could answer, Madeline appeared, emerging from a knot of bridesmaids who had been whispering since the toast. She walked too fast to be casual, her veil tilted, her eyes hard as polished glass. Why did you come? She hissed, low enough that no one else would hear. To ruin it? I took a breath, then a sip of champagne. Slow, unbothered. You've had every day, I said quietly. I only needed one. She blinked, her jaw tensed. Then she turned, retreating into a circle of floral arrangements and forced joy. My mother stood still. For once, no words came. I rose from the table. The room had started to shift again. Tiny orbitals around me now. Small nods. A woman who'd once asked if I was still single now touched my arm and said, "We should talk about your work sometime." I smiled. We never talked before. I moved toward the patio doors, needing air. The velvet heat of the ballroom had begun to feel like a fever. Then I heard him. Richard's voice, soft and certain. "You don't have to prove anything anymore." I turned to face him. "I'm not proving," I said. "I'm finishing." The lights shimmered, but something had dimmed. No one could fake brightness anymore. The party still wore its costume. Gold drapes fluttered, violins played, and the soft chime of glasses echoed under chandeliers. But the tension in the air was real now. Less stagecraft, more tremor. Like the aftermath of an earthquake you weren't ready to admit had happened. I slipped away. The lounge near the back of the venue was dimmer than I remembered. Maybe the bulbs had dulled, or maybe I'd just stopped filtering the world through their lens. Everything in here had been curated. Curved furniture, deep-toned walls, candlelight bouncing in gold-rimmed mirrors. But nothing could soften what was about to happen. She was already there. Evelyn Harper sat like porcelain might, composed, glazed, one crack from collapse. She didn't look up when I entered. Gerald was next to her, but you could have replaced him with a coat rack and no one would have noticed. I sat across from them. No more hiding behind champagne or polite nods. "We didn't know, Emery," my mother said, eyes finally meeting mine. "We really didn't." I didn't blink. I just reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. I opened my email app, searched one name, one date, tapped. I tilted the screen toward her. A subject line. "Got the grant. Sent 5 years ago. Still marked unread." "That's the thing, Mom," I said, voice steady. "You didn't know because you never asked." She blinked. "We thought you were just busy. You always seemed distant." "No," I said. "You made distance, and I filled it with things that mattered." Silence. Gerald shifted. "You're doing well," he said, eyes on the floor. "That's what matters." I almost laughed. Almost. "It mattered 10 years ago," I said, sitting back. "When I was mailing scholarships to the fridge and pretending that maybe, just maybe, someone would say, 'Well done.'" I leaned forward. "Now, I've outgrown your applause." The quiet between us deepened. Not hostile. Hollow. My mother looked at the floor, then at the candles, then at me. Her voice was barely a breath. "You're not like us." I stood, smoothed the folds of my dress, looked her in the eye one last time. "That's the one thing you got right." I didn't leave with a smile. I left with silence, and the air finally felt like mine. The valet station glowed beneath overhead lanterns, a patch of quiet in the hum of fading celebration. Voices blurred inside the ballroom now felt far away, sealed behind glass and years of trying. My heels clicked against the stone walkway, unhurried. There was no one trailing me with apologies or praise. No last-minute hugs, no manufactured tears, just air, just me. A woman near the curb blinked when she saw me. Her expression shifted, familiarity dawning with delay. "I didn't know you were that Emery Harper," she said, adjusting her clutch like it might give her something smarter to say. I met her eyes. "You still don't—" The words weren't cruel, just true. My car pulled up, sleek and silent, but I didn't reach for the door just yet. Richard appeared from the shadows, hands in his pockets, his usual tailored calm wrapped around him like armor. "Heading out?" he asked gently. Finally. He nodded, gaze holding mine. "I have a project starting in the fall. Something real. Global infrastructure. Tech. Equity. I want your name on the charter." I raised a brow, half amused. "You know how to flatter?" "I know how to recognize alignment when I see it," he said. Think about it. I will, I said, but not tonight. He smiled, small, respectful, and stepped back. Behind him, Olivia Crane exited the venue, her eyes finding mine with a quiet promise. She didn't wave, just nodded. An invitation without pressure. A door, slightly open. I slipped into the driver's seat myself. No valet. No waiting. No one else behind the wheel. No music. Just the road stretching out. The sky folding into indigo. The wind cool against my cheek as I rolled the window down. The car moved forward without drama. The venue, the noise, the glitter, they all shrank in the rear view. And me? I didn't look back. Sometimes power isn't being seen. It's knowing you never needed to be. Though the chandeliers still shimmered, the night no longer belonged to illusions. Emery had walked into the room as a shadow, but left having reclaimed the narrative they tried to write without her. Justice didn't arrive with thunder, but with quiet clarity and the refusal to be invisible. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, it echoed not for applause, but for closure. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is not revenge at all. It's becoming untouchable.